This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, and you're listening to Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, and I am joined by...
Shilo Sixx from Film Fantasy.
And also the newly formed...
Rock Fantasy.
There you go.
Yeah.
We have a wonderful guest on the phone with us today, somebody I as well as Shilo admire tremendously, the wonderful, the talented, the beautiful Adrienne Barbeau. Hello, Adrienne.
Thank you. Good morning. Hello.
It is a good morning now that we have you here. We've been waiting for this for a while, you know.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, you're a very talented actress, and it's just an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, you know. The wonderful Stevie Wayne. Yeah.
So you're on tour doing Pippin right now, huh?
I am, yes. I wish we were coming to Canada, but we're not. We're going to Amsterdam.
Is that something that you do in the future to come to Canada?
I love Canada. I love coming to Canada, visiting Canada, working in Canada. I've done, over a long career, done a lot of stuff up there. Vancouver, Toronto. I once took a mini-series solely because they told me we'd be shooting in Montreal. We ended up in Saint Jovite instead, but my father's family is from Quebec.
I'm from Montreal.
You haven't made it to New Brunswick yet, though, huh?
Have not made it to New Brunswick.
It seems to be the one place that's obscure from a lot of people. It does. You know, they mentioned Toronto and Montreal, and I've even heard them mention Nova Scotia at one point, but yet New Brunswick, it's either they know what it is, or they have to take a moment and figure out what it is, or it's just completely obscure to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just our cold, it must be our cold winters.
You're farther east, right?
Yes, we are.
That's right.
Yes.
We're bordered from Quebec on the west and Nova Scotia on the east.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, here's a test on your Canadian knowledge. Have you heard of the Trailer Park Boys? Dead silence.
Trailer Park Boys. You know, it sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you in what context. No. Are they from Canada?
Oh, yeah. They're Canadian. Well, they're from Nova Scotia, and basically it's three fellas. One's a recidivist, the other's a bigger recidivist, and the other one is just the one who gets roped into all their schemes.
Reitman produced their first film.
Oh.
Yeah, it was quite a funny movie, but no, they're Canadian. They're Canadian lore now. You know, they ran for 8 seasons back in the early 2000s, and they're quite the funniest. One of them, his name's Ricky, and he's just an idiot to boot, but the funniest character you've ever seen.
Oh well, I'll look for it.
Yeah, you'll like it. I'm sure everybody loves it. They just went international too.
Great.
Tell us about your process with Pippin, and you know that's stage and screen, a little bit different from each other. Explain that process.
Well, I started out on stage. I started out doing musical comedy when I was 15. You know, in a community theater, and then right after I graduated high school, I went overseas to now it's called Southeast Asia. In those days, way back when, it was the Orient, with a musical comedy review, and we entertained the armed forces. We were right on the DMZ. We were on an atomic testing center, an island called Johnston Island, which was an atomic testing site. We were all over. And then I went to New York and did musical comedy there. I was one of the daughters in Fiddler on the Roof, and then I won a Tony for my role as Rizzo in the original Grease. So coming back to Pippin is not totally unfamiliar. Grease led to Maude, and that led to moving to Los Angeles, and that led to many, many years of television and film. And I did theater, you know, little short stints, summer stock and things like that over the years. But last year, the beginning of the year, I got a call from my agent saying they were interested in having me join the national tour. And I had never seen Pippin. I didn't know anything about it. But Andrea Martin had won a Tony Award for her role in the revival. And so I went online and saw what she was doing. I don't know if you know the show well, but this incarnation, in fact, we have several of our acrobats are from Canada, most of them from Les Sept Doigts de la Main.
Okay, yeah.
And some of them from Cirque.
Ah.
And it is a traveling circus acrobatic show incorporated into the story of Pippin, the young man searching for the meaning of life. And there's Andrea doing her song in the first act, but singing some of it as she's hanging upside down from a trapeze, 20 feet off the floor. And I saw that, and I said, yeah, I think this is something I'd like to do. So I joined the company. I did 6 months earlier in the year and then took 3 months off so that I could get my boys into their college dorms. They just started. And then they asked me to come back, and so I'm doing it for a little while longer.
Well, this sounds like something I really want to see now.
It is a great show. It is, the music's fantastic. The philosophy is fantastic. And the acrobats are absolutely amazing, terrifying and amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd love to see something like this. It just sounds like a dream come true to see that.
Well, I think the closest we're getting to you is Boston, probably, or Providence. And,
Boston's not too far from us. I've traveled quite a bit to Boston to see Priceless Things, and this sounds just like that trip.
We'll be there next February, I believe.
Next February. Might be able to catch that, actually. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm thinking I might actually catch that.
You did quite a few films for John Carpenter, and of course, fresh right after Halloween, he did The Fog, and of course, you had a central role in that. I didn't go to the remake; I wasn't interested in that.
Remake was awful.
I mean, it was minus Barbeau and minus Curtis. Why would I go see it?
Oh, the remake was absolutely awful. But I love Stevie Wayne. How did you come into that character?
Well, I met John Carpenter on a television film that he wrote and directed and that I co-starred in called Someone's Watching Me. And we fell in love. And
of course.
Time came for him to write his next film, and he said to me, I'd like to write, a role for you. And I said, okay, fine, sure. And in those days, I had been doing Maude with one of your countrymen, Conrad Bain, who was from Alberta.
Yes.
It was a time in my industry when if you were doing film, if you were doing television, they wouldn't see you for film. The prevailing thought was nobody's going to pay to see you in a movie theater if they can see you for free once a week in their home. And so John, wrote The Fog and handed me the script, and I said, sure, that was my first feature. Not my first film, because I'd done many television films and miniseries and things like that, but that was my first feature.
And how cool was it you worked with the mother-daughter duel of Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis being in that film?
Yes, that was fantastic. Unfortunately, I didn't have any scenes with them, but we were all up there in Inverness, California, on location together, and we just had a great time. And it was a perfect experience.
I was lucky enough to get a Janet Leigh autograph picture before she passed away, and yeah, I cherish that. She was, I never met her, but she's just, from what I know, she struck me as a very nice woman.
She was.
Yeah,
She was-
rest in
she was
peace,
a
Conrad
lovely
Bain.
woman.
I had to think about the name for a second there. It came into my head and thought, I know who that is. And I looked up and I thought, oh, yes, I remember who he was now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Conrad played. He played Arthur in Maude.
Yeah, he was on
For
Philip
6
Drummond.
seasons, and then he went on to play Mr. Drummond in different
Strokes, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Maude. Maude, I guess, ran from 1972 to 1978. Now, I was born in 1972, so that would have been my first 6 years of my life. And
Okay.
you worked with one of
Well,
the...
now they did just release the DVD, so.
Oh, sweet.
You worked with one of the funniest women I've ever seen. Bea Arthur is so dry in her humor and so great. What was she like?
She was fantastic. She was, in the first place, and I took it for granted in those days because I hadn't done television before, and I'd only worked on stage with, stage performers, and Bea came from the stage. We all did. But she was the most incredibly professional actor you could ever ask for, and she was loving and giving, and I wrote a memoir called "There Are Worse Things I Could Do" after the song I sing in Greece, or that Rizzo sings in Greece, and there's a whole chapter there about Maude or about Bea herself and about Maude, and it was just the best work experience, and it was because of Bea, because she set the tone for everyone.
No, I love the Golden Girls.
Yes. Yeah.
She
And
was the one that stuck out.
To this day, there are times when I hear myself deliver a line, or I sort of step outside and I see myself do a take, and I learned it from Bea. She was just the pinnacle of a comedienne.
She was always my favorite on the Golden Girls. I watched that show back in the day. But she was the one that always stuck out and made me laugh my face off,
Even those Shoppers Drug Mart commercials.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, I haven't seen a lot of Maude, but I remember I saw a clip online. There was I forget what I was looking up, but there was a big pie fight, and you guys were stuck out in the middle of it.
That may have been every season, one of our episodes was where Maude was giving a telethon. We were doing a telethon for, some cause. And it gave all of us in the show the opportunity to sing and dance because most of us came from musical theater. Bill Macy had been in Calcutta right before we did Maude. I was in Greece. Bea, you might know her as Vera in Mame. She had done Threepenny Opera. I think she played Lucy. Barbara, I can't remember the character name. So we all came from musical theater. So that was, if I remember, and I don't remember a lot of the episodes, I think that probably was in a telethon episode that ended up in a pie fight. Did they get you? Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I really don't remember. And as long as I've had the DVDs on my shelf, I've not gone back to watch them. But I understand from everyone who does see it, it is playing on some of the cable stations in the United States now, that it really holds up. It is as timely today, certainly the topics that we dealt with, as it was in the 70s, maybe more so, because we seem to, in my country at least, be going back to some dark age practices that we dealt with on Maude.
I was just going to say, moving forward, I think the role I always think of when your name comes up, I loved you best, I think, in Escape from New York as Maggie. I loved you in that movie.
For me, it's Stevie Wayne, but yet I grew up with the show in the later years, of course, Scooby-Doo. And you did Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Yes, I did. Yes,
How
I
did you
did.
manage to get that? Like
My-
that is got to be one of my favorite movies from that year.
You're kidding?
No, I'm not. It's really one of my favorite movies from that year. It really is. I love the horror aspect to it. I love the goofiness to the film. I love the setting to it. It's just the Louisiana bayous is so funny, and that sequence where they eating the Cajun peppers and their mouths are on fire and they chug the water. Like, it's just a funny and goofy film, and I still remember it to this day. And you were Anita Simone.
Madame Simone.
Madame Simone, right.
Avec mon...
Well, yes, you were the New Orleans. Yeah, it was such a great film. How did you manage to become Simone, the voice of Madame Simone? You were the villain.
I do a lot of voiceovers. I was the voice of Catwoman for the animated series of Batman, and I've done a lot of video games in the last couple of years, God of War and what's that other one? It's really big, Halo 4, and a couple of some others.
Sure.
And I have we have in Los Angeles the voiceover industry is quite separate from the theatrical television and film industry, and so we have agents who just specifically hire handle actors for voiceovers. And I just got a call from my voiceover agent saying they want to cast you in this Scooby-Doo movie. Go do this movie. I showed up and I hadn't even read the script. You don't usually. You get the script the day you get there with voiceover stuff. And, there she was with a French Louisiana Bayou accent, which I had no clue. So I just made it up as I went along.
Oh, you did a fantastic job with it. Morgan Moonscar, the pirate. Oh, I loved the film back then. I still to this day. And you were, Madame Simone turned out to be the villain for the film, which was even more interesting because, think of her, this pleasant woman, and you kind of get the feeling she's into a little bit of business, and all of a sudden, oh, she's the villain, and yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really fun movie. I still like it to this day. It's my favorite film that Hanna-Barbera ever did.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Tell me about Escape from New York.
Well, again, I had the great good fortune to have John write the role with me in mind, and again, I love Maggie. I love her moral code. I think one doesn't know why she's inside, but probably had to do with Brain and that scene where she attempts to avenge his death is one of my very favorites.
I love that look Kurt Russell gives you when he hands you the gun, and just that look of admiration, The
whole thing is right there. There's no dialogue. It's like, I'm going to do this, and okay, I understand why you're doing it, and I agree with it, and here's your gun.
And another thing too, and John Carpenter pointed this out in an interview, when you first meet Snake Plissken, that sexy exchange in your eyes you give him, it was so subtle, but it was so effective. That little look you give him.
Well,
you know what I'm talking about.
It came out of the words, and came out of Kurt. I mean, it's not hard to look at Kurt and have that sexual, or especially as Snake Plissken, and have that sexual undertone there. Like,
that sounds like Kurt Russell.
This is who they've been talking about.
And you had some great veteran actors in that. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton, Donald Pleasance, Lee Van Cleef. What was your memories of them? Yes.
Now, see, I didn't have any scenes with Lee. Most of my scenes were shot in St. Louis and then down at USC. And Lee's scenes were shot at a separate time.
He was so good, though, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yes.
And none of us knew at that time, but that was the last film he would make. I think he already knew that he had cancer.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
He had such a
But-
dominating presence, too, you know?
Yes, John was a huge fan of his and was overjoyed to be able to get him for the film.
But you worked a lot with Harry Dean Stanton in the film, who did a little cameo in the Avengers when the Hulk's pants are half off. You see him briefly. What was it like working with Harry? Or Harold?
Yeah.
Harold.
Harry's a character. He was... all of them. They were. It was a great group of people to work with. I don't know if you saw Harry's work years later in Big Love for HBO, but it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It is a series well worth watching. If for no other reason than his performance, he is he's sort of a Warren Jeffs. Is that the fellows that he is the head of a Mormon? They didn't use the word cult, but a group of Mormons who've broken away from the mother church, and he has many wives. He's so good. It's well worth watching.
Harry Dean Stanton is one of my all-time favorite actors.
Yes.
I love Brett in Alien.
Yes.
He's just such
Yeah,
a
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
he's
he's
such
an
a
alien, yeah.
talented actor, and there was a film that they did in 1997. It was bad. It was with Steven Seagal called Fire Down Below. The only thing good about that film was Harry Dean Stanton.
Harry Dean Stanton.
Yeah, that was the only thing good about that film. That was the only thing good was his character.
Do you have any memories of Donald Pleasance?
Donald was my absolute favorite because he was one of the funniest men I have ever worked with. There was something about his delivery, his dry sense of humor, and invariably he would say something right before we were going to shoot, and John would yell, "Okay, rolling," and I'd say, "No, stop, you've got to stop. I can't get the words out," because Harry was making me laugh. It was just, I loved him dearly. It was so funny. And my first introduction to Harry was only his voice, because back in 1968 through 1970 or something like that, 71, when I was doing Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway, my dressing room backed up to the theater. I think maybe there was an alleyway in between us, but I'm not even sure. The theater next door where Donald was doing The Man in the Glass Booth. And every night I could hear him through these brick walls giving, some speech that he was doing on stage. He had such power in his voice, and I finally said, what is that? And somebody said, that's the show next door. That's Donald Pleasance doing Man in the Glass Booth. And then years later, there he was making me laugh in Escape from New York.
You did one of my favorite comedies as well, Back to School. I love this movie, and when Rodney Dangerfield passed away, I remember the morning it being announced, and you and you gave him no respect on camera, but you
I remember going into complete tears that morning when it was announced, just looking back to everything he had did, and he never did get any respect. That was the beauty of who he was. If you look at Caddyshack, nobody respects him in that movie, and he even says, "I get no respect." When the judge hates him, and he's just such a great actor, and I remember that morning.
But you had great comedic chemistry with him. Tell me, how did you get that part?
Well, again, that was just, it was a straight offer. I think maybe, I have no idea, there's a little bit of Billy from Creepshow in that role.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Maybe they got the idea from seeing Creepshow, but my agents called and said, they'd like you to do this part, and I do have to say that he may not have thought that he got respect, and used that for his career, but off screen, I'll never forget the day I showed up for work, and there was this line of women standing outside Rodney's trailer. I said, what are they? They all want to meet Rodney. They've all got crushes on Rodney.
Him in his bathrobe.
Yeah.
Well, here's
he got plenty of respect off screen.
here's some back to school questions for you. Why do all your furnitures have names?
Oh my gosh, I've only seen the movie once, and I don't even remember what you're referring to.
He said that. You go, please don't throw your coat on the boiler chair or something like that. And he goes, why do all of our...
Well, that was... wasn't he a furniture... Wasn't that his business? He was a furniture manufacturer?
Tall and fat clothes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It was just her way of indicating how much money she had spent, because that was a very famous design chair. Now that I see what you're saying.
And you say to him,
that was the name of the furniture designer, or the artist who had designed the furniture.
But you say to him, you go, are you saying I spend too much money? He goes, no, you spend too much money? Everybody goes to Switzerland to get their watch fixed.
Yeah.
And then when your final scene was so great, you go, I want a divorce. He goes, let's talk divorce. He pulls out these pictures. He goes, here's you, there's Giorgio. What's with the midget over here?
I know.
You two had such...
Some of that was Rodney ad-libbing, too, I'm sure.
But you two were so great. Like when he opens the cupboard and sees you with that guy, and he goes, oh, look, Adam and Evil. You two were so great together in that movie. Even, I got a quote, too, the scene at the table, like... He brings that woman over, and the man, he goes, don't you love her dress? It's such a perfect shade of green. He goes, yeah, if you just had pockets, you'd look like a pool table.
A lot of that was Rodney, I'm sure.
And you were just in that one section, but you two were so great together.
I enjoyed working with him. I mean, you couldn't not, he was lovely to work with. I mean, he was just so endearing and funny.
And even though you were in the later part of the movie, well, I think one of the biggest jokes was who could cast Sam Kinison playing a professor?
Yes.
Well, you've worked with so many talented actors and actresses yourself. I think you're an inspiration to a lot of the actresses that came after you. I think a lot of them, the ones who really wanted to get into different genres of film as you have, I think you were a big inspiration to them.
I was going to say, too, you were also in another big comedy hit called The Cannonball Run, and you had that running joke with Tara Buckman where you always unzip your suit. And you were in one of the funniest scenes when you guys do it one too many times and happened to be a female cop come over.
Yes, Valerie Perrine. It didn't work.
It didn't work. I didn't say that was one of my favorite comedies, but I say that was a great joke in the movie where you guys were so confident and then it backfired.
You need to read my book. There are worse things I could do. It wasn't my favorite comedy either, but...
Well, Burt Reynolds is... I like Burt Reynolds, but after Smokey and the Bandit, it's almost like he was repeating himself a little too much until Boogie Nights. I'm not that familiar with all of Burt's work, so I can't really comment on that, but it was... a lot of people love it. I mean, I have people come up to me all the time, say that, oh, Cannonball Run, my favorite movie, my favorite comedy. We love you in it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
We love you in it. You and Tara were great. No complaints there.
No, I think John and yourself really brought that horror genre out in the early days of it, with The Thing and I think a lot of that work really stands the test of time now. You look back on that, and you starred in a lot of John's films. I think that there was a chemistry. That's why those films really worked out the way they did. They were good films.
They were well made, and you're right. There are legions of people out there who still watch those movies, once a month sometimes, and they have not only have they stood the test of time, but for instance, in the case of The Thing, I think they have, they've found an even greater audience now, and people now acknowledge how brilliant that film was. Unfortunately, when it came out, it was at the time when the country wanted E.T. E.T.
Yep.
came out at the same time, and it was just the wrong release time. But now everyone looks back and says,
"One of my favorite horror films."
It's brilliant.
Yeah. It definitely is. The Halloween and The Thing are probably my two favorite films that John did that really stood the test of time. Now, I find it staggeringly funny that they've got another Halloween movie coming out next year.
Oh, gee.
Halloween Returns.
Well,
Carpenter did the best
they're
one.
They're going to make money.
Yeah, it's not just that. They got another Texas Chainsaw coming out too. They're calling it Leatherface.
Yeah,
you just wonder where the hell's all this going,
Speaking of which, though, I mean, you were in Swamp Thing, and we just recently lost the great Wes Craven.
Yes.
What were your memories of him?
Wes was a wonderful man to work for, and I think he was working under, and again, I wrote about this in the book. He was working under really terrible conditions because they just kept cutting his budget, and he was forced to, throw entire scenes out, and we were working in just really horrendous. There was one day when we showed up for work, and the makeup trailer was gone because they hadn't paid the bills.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, and he managed to come up to give us that wonderful film that has been such a mainstay in so many people's viewing. I love Swamp Thing. I love Swamp Thing.
It's just like John. Wes is a pioneer as well.
Yes.
If you watch the original Hills Have Eyes, there is a true horror feel to the film.
Yes.
And it's just terrifying. The story set aside is one thing, but the film itself is just generally terrifying just from the way it's directed. And I really admire that. I really admired that in Wes. And Swamp Thing I saw that very, very long time ago. And they're actually planning on rebooting it, which, my humble opinion, I don't like remakes. I think the original Swamp Thing was a genuine masterpiece as well.
Well, we'll see what they do.
It got its praise when it was released, but I don't think it got the proper respect it deserved.
You did quite a lot of horror stuff. Like you even did section in Creepshow as well.
Oh yes, that's one of my favorites. I'm afraid I'm running out of time.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just noticed the time. We just got caught up in this interview. I'm sorry about that. Listen,
that's okay.
I got two quick questions before you go. Number one, where can we go to get an autograph picture?
Oh gosh. While I am on, and this, you wouldn't be broadcasting this, right?
No. This is recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, we're pre-recorded, so we can say whatever we want. And I have a master's in editing, so we can put this together.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, while I'm on tour, I can't do anything because I'm not home. But
Right.
if you the easiest thing for me is if you just can send a stamped self-addressed envelope to an address I'll give you. I can, I'll when I get back to LA, I will get it in the mail. In terms of your audience, I mean, if you need any more information, I do have a website, abarbeau.com, and I do have, well, aside from the memoir, I have 3 vampire novels that are available on Amazon that I'm very proud of. And the second of them should be coming to the big screen next year, we're hoping.
I'm just taking a look now to try to find your book. What's the title of your book, Adrienne?
The memoir is There Are Worse Things I Could Do.
Okay, yeah, that one sounds really interesting.
I was just looking.
If you go to Amazon and go to just Amazon Books or whatever and type in my name, I think you'll see all of them. The second one, Love Bite.
Yeah, I see that right here, actually.
Yeah, the second, that one, which is the second in the series, the Vampires of Hollywood series, but it's a standalone. That one has been optioned by one of the studios, and I just co-wrote the screenplay with Harrison Smith, who Harrison has, I think, 5 films now that he's written or directed or produced, and we're hoping to see it to get into production after the first of the year.
Now,
We'll have a different title.
Yeah.
I like the Love Bites. I'm looking at the book art to it there now, and it's pretty sexy. I'll give it that. Love Bites, Vampires of Hollywood 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. Like, I'd like to see that into a movie.
Yeah.
And
It's fun.
Yeah.
And one last thing, I was wondering if you'd do a plug for our show.
Sure.
Yeah, just say, and I hope you don't have to write this down, but just say you were listening to Greg Gilbert and Chris Simpkins at CHSR FM in Fredericton. Is that okay?
CHSR.
Yeah.
CHSR 97.9.
CHSR 97.9 in Fredericton.
Fredericton, New Brunswick. And my name is Greg Gilbert, Greg Gilbert, and my co-host is Chris Simpkins. Yeah. And just say your name and give us a little plug, thank you.
Chris Simpkins.
Yeah.
With a P?
Simpkins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All yours.
Hi, this is Adrienne Barbeau, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert and Chris Simpkins on CHSR 97.2, coming to you from Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Thank you very, very, very much, Adrienne. And I'm sorry to kept you so long. We lost touch. That's what happens when we're talking to a lovely talent like yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, Adrienne. We've been waiting for this.
If you're on Facebook, we can, or your webpage, we can send you the recording of this when we're done.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Do you want me to just send it to John, or
just send it to John?
I can do that. Yeah.
Send it to John. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you so much. You're a sweetheart. We had an absolute blast talking to you.
God bless and good luck on Pippin.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing about it.
I'm on my way to the theater.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.